participate with us. But I hope soon. I hope the audience can take this opportunity to interact with our distinguished speaker, which is very rare, I think, and especially our ulama who can master this area of knowledge. Because so far, Muslims in Malaysia, and especially non-Muslim, can be said it is something new for us. So very interesting. We have a very interesting opportunity to take this one. Thank you very much.
And still very young, huh? Yeah. Okay, all right.
If I may comment, Jazakallah khair, Mufti. This is very informative. This is Maqasid Syariah 101, for those who don't know. And I had the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to deal with some of these issues in writing and research. There is a book that I wrote on usul al-fiqh that's called Maqasid Syariah كفلسفة للتشريع الإسلامي. Maqasid Syariah is philosophy of Islamic law, a systems approach in which I deal with issues of مصالح المرسلة, نصوص والإجماع والقياس والاستصحاب والاستصلاح والاستحسان وسد الذرائع, and all of that from a maqasid perspective. And for those who are interested in this kind of introduction, I would really urge you to read. It's a long story. What I tried to do is to build on Sheikh Tahir ibn Ashur and on Imam al-Shatibi in their approaches to usul al-fiqh that I think are different from the Malikiyya and the Shafi'iyya and the altogether. In that book I compared 9 different schools, and not just the 4 Sunni schools, but the others, Zaydis and the Ibadis and the Mu'tazila and all of that in their fiqh. And comparing the 9 different schools, we see that Maqasid Sharia is a common theme between the different ways of doing ijtihad. And that it's essential that we move beyond the historical madhahib into a contemporary understanding of fiqh. Because the madhahib, to me, are not fiqh, they are the history of fiqh. And when we study the history of fiqh, we are able to move to a contemporary time where we think about the issues, exactly as our Sheikh said, according to al-maslaha. Because when we talk about contemporary questions, 2 weeks ago I was in a seminar, we deal with organ transplantation and all of that and the fatawa. You cannot find in any of the madhahib anything about organ transplantation. Yes, what you find, replace a nose with a golden nose or a silver tooth, but that's some of the scholars said that, but that's not organ transplantation. Organ transplantation, you transplant a heart, what exactly is death, brain death, etc. These are the questions that we dealt with, and that seminar was in Washington about 3 weeks ago. And these questions have no answers from the madhahib al-fiqhiyya. And there is no ijma' and there is no qiyas, and you cannot really do. So we have to go to the usul, we have to go to the maqasid, hifdh al-nafs, and so forth, whether we own our bodies or we don't, and how we can. Questions of principles that for contemporary ijtihad, any mas'ala that we have, it's a new mas'ala, we will not find answers from the madhahib. This is not like wudu or hajj or zakat. And therefore it's important to deal with maqasid al-sharia, to take fiqh forward, the way our Shaykh is mentioning. Jazakallah khair. Barakallahu feekum. I had a few questions already from some of the youth, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They can ask, but I already have some questions from them. Inshallah, I can ask.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Aiman. So I just have I just want to ask a question about what you talked about in the last session. So you talked a lot about like the area of consensus and also the area of difference. My first question is that how do you define who constitutes the majority that will decide the consensus? So from what I can think of, it's probably either the public itself, so the society that I mentioned, or it could be people in position of leadership. So probably in the case of Malaysia, it would be the people in the parliament. But there would be pros and cons I can imagine if you say it's either the public or the leaders. But I guess it'd be helpful if you can provide clarification on that. And then the other thing is that in recent events, I feel like there are a lot of things that is trying to shift what has been agreed to be a consensus in Malaysia in terms of like the cultural and what is morally acceptable, like what you said in public morality, to something that is very new. And how should we first as a society respond to this kind of sort of shifting of ideology? Because some of them are consensus that was formed like maybe 50 years ago, 40 years ago, but then it was some entities are trying to change the way it was, and I think it's a very dangerous shift because it sort of deconstructs what we think or what we as Malaysians, because we have our own values, we have our own very deep cultural understanding of how we live. So how would we respond as a society, and how would the leaders themselves, who are in position of leadership in the parliament and whatnot, respond to this kind of thing? Because like you said, we have to find consensus, but the problem is the consensus always changes depending on how the society changes. So as the society develops in their thinking and they're exposed to all sorts of ideology from the outside, with all the negative impressions that are being put onto Islam from the international community and whatnot. So how do you sort of combat this as what I perceive as a very dangerous shift to the ideology?
Well, mashallah, two big questions. I will need another lecture to answer. What constitutes a majority? Is it the majority of the public or the majority of the leadership or the legislators and so on? I think all what you mentioned constitute majorities. You could have a majority that is measured by the public, or a majority measured by the legislators, or a majority of leaders in a decision-making executive kind of style. What constitutes a majority to me, in terms of what I mentioned, is what brings stability to the society. What is important in a majority decision is something that stabilizes the society and doesn't create fractures and doesn't create mafsada or a harm that is bigger than the maslaha or the good that you're trying to achieve. So a majority in a parliament that is 50+1 is not enough to change major forces in the society. Example, post the Arab Spring, between quotes, not exactly a spring, but what happened there. And we had Islamic parliaments in Tunis and Egypt and other places. Parliaments, yes, 50+1, it's an Islamic parliament. It's 51%, or elected a president from an Islamic party, yes. But the society does not have consensus. So for the president from the Islamic party, and I sympathize with him, and I think it was a bloody coup that is supposed to go away. I agree with all of this. But I blame him and blame his party for thinking that because they had 50+1 majority, that they can change major parts of the society at a depth that they could not handle, you see. So a 50+1 is not enough to apply major legislations or change the nature of the country. So if you have 50 plus 1 Muslims, for example, in Malaysia we were talking about the hudud and these issues. You really cannot have 50 plus 1 and then you change the nature of the country from a federation into a khilafah. You really can't. Like, it's not possible. 51% will not do it. And you will create fractures in the society. And that's exactly what we said in Egypt and in other places, that it's not possible to have a simple majority in a parliament or an election, and you want to make, so what constitutes a majority is what brings stability in the society. 50 plus 1, 90% could be a majority, but does not bring stability. So therefore you have to back off. You cannot really apply something even with 90% if it's going to cause a rift in the society. So what you are mentioning in the second question is very important too, because under the pressure you mentioned of international community and so forth, sometimes we try to change major things. We have to differentiate here between the fixed matters and the variable matters in Islam. In Islam there is thawabit and there is mutaghayyirat. The fixed matters in Islam are not supposed to be changeable. The definition of sin, for example. In Islam, alcohol or intoxicants or adultery will never become halal. And if the international pressure is going to make us consider adultery or zina in Islam to be halal, then no, it's not. It will never be. Or I don't know what we hear wherever I go in this world, the new forms of marriage and this men and women, no, that is not, that is zina in Islam. It will never change. So the fixed matters in Islam, we have to be very clear about them from a moral perspective. The variable matters, what you called the cultural issues, they could change. We need to differentiate between elements of the Malaysian culture that is a matter of culture that could develop versus a matter of Sharia that is fixed. So if part of the Malaysian culture is not to drink alcohol, this should not change because this is part of the Sharia. But of course, if part of the Malaysian culture has to do with, I don't know, certain colors or certain styles, or this could change because societies change. And what we eat and what we drink and what we wear and the institutions we learn in, this changes. As long as we don't contradict something fixed in the Sharia. But the issue of democracy, which was another question from one of you I promised to answer, is also a very important issue. If you're going to take the majority, and one question was, the majority brought a non-Muslim governor. What do we do about that? So my answer was, what can you do about that? You know, maybe you don't accept a non-Muslim governor, but you are a democratic system. How can you change that? Is again through the system. Wallahi, elect a Muslim governor. Because the only other way is to make a coup, you know, in the Arab style, you know, to find some people in the army like, Sisi style, and you make a coup and you say we're an Islamic government. That's the only way you can change that. But this is not the Islamic way, because it will bring bloodshed, and you will have to open prisons. You know, they open hundreds of prisons in the Arab world to take all of these youth who are not happy with all of these military governments, you see. So how? The question, I agree that if you are a majority of Muslims, that you have a Muslim prime minister. If the society elected a non-Muslim prime minister, how can you change that? Well, two ways. One is to make a coup, as I'm saying, for an Islamic party to find some guns and say, okay, non-Muslim prime minister, you're out, we're in. The other way is from within, is the next elections. Even if you're a majority, next elections you come and say, okay guys, we have to go back to a Muslim prime minister who represents our values, and you convince the public. The public is not convinced, then you are not really in a Muslim society. You are in a majority that is not, you're a minority. Even if you are in number a majority, because numbers do not make a majority. The numbers are not important. What is important is the convictions of the people. you see, and how convicted they are to change the status quo. So democracy, in that sense, is a very good governance system. It is not equal to Islam, but it is close to the Islamic values, as close as we know from the Islamic values. We apply democratic ways. Because the alternative to democracy today is dictatorship, which is further from Islam than democracy. But if democracy brings a law or a leader or something that you do not like, the only way to change it is again through democracy. It's not through a military coup, really. You cannot really do that. And to change democracy, you have to educate the public. When you educate the public about Islam, the public will choose Islam. And I mean by the public, Muslim and non-Muslim. Educate the public that alcohol is not good for you, intoxicants are wrong. And the non-Muslim who believes that intoxicants are wrong will vote with you against a law that allows alcohol. But if the law allows it, what can you do? So it is not about allowing something haram or having a non-Muslim leader. It is about how you can change that. It's very important that we change that from within the system, not from on top of the system. Because this top of the system is going to be a game of violence. And unfortunately, as Muslims, we don't have means of violence all the way, like from Morocco all the way to here, Malaysia, all the Islamic land, the Muslim majority countries. We really don't have means of violence in order to force our values on the world. You know, the Americans do, the Europeans do. When we have enough means of violence, perhaps then we can force our values. But we really don't. So we have to be realistic about what we propose. We cannot really propose changes that makes fractures in our societies. And we are weak people, and we don't manufacture enough, and we don't do enough in order for us to be strong. You see, the Arabs talk about Islam, and they don't manufacture anything. They don't build, at least here you have a couple cars, and they don't build a car, they don't manufacture a pencil in the Arab world. And they are talking about the Khilafah. It's a joke. You can't really make a Khilafah with some stolen cars and hacked internet sites on Twitter and some stolen guns from Africa, and you want to make a Khilafah. No, it doesn't work. You want to build a Khilafah, you build a Khilafah based on power and based on building a strong society, not with a bunch of stolen cars and stolen email accounts. And you build the Khilafah here on American companies, Facebook and Twitter and so on, and we say that we announce the Khilafah on Facebook. It's a joke, you see. So many Muslims think like that because they have some accounts that they can announce some stuff, that they have the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground has to be respected. And the reality on the ground is that we have to live in multi-religious and multicultural societies. And we have to come to a common ground between Muslims and non-Muslims. And Muslims who are not practicing Islam, secular, and Muslims who practice Islam and very, extreme. We have to come to a common ground, all of us. And that common ground is values that I mentioned. I hope this answers the question. I was asked another question by one of you, maybe I could answer as well, and might be, in terms of my involvement with the Sharia Index. And yes, I was part of the scholars who developed the ideas of the Sharia Index back in 2007, 8, and 9. And that was mentioned in a book that was written by Sheikh Faisal Raouf from America, who assembled a number of scholars to think about the Sharia Index. But the Sharia Index in Malaysia, I was not involved in. I have no idea about. This is not part of the work I did. I did the scholarly work of thinking about the Maqasid Syariah for measuring development and so on, the theoretical work until 2009. But I heard about the Sharia Index here in Malaysia. It might be inspired by that committee, but I was not part of any Malaysian Sharia Index. No, this was not the work I did scholarly. The work I did was about using Maqasid Syariah to measure development and well-being and ideas, not a practice. And of course the results that I read in the newspapers about Malaysia scoring 80% and whatever scoring 60, all of the scores and the numbers, I was not part of this, and I have nothing to do with that really, because I don't work in the area of politics. I work in the area of scholarship. So this is what I did. Jazakumullah khair.
Ada soalan ni.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. USM. My concern is now we are facing this ideological war, Ghazwa al-Fiqh. So, because of this consensus idea that's to respect the other party, means the liberal ideology, maybe hijack these kind of ideas and try to dominate us by giving idea that we are common, we share the values. So how do we cater these kind of things? Because the worry is that, because sometimes I see, I've watched in TV also, that certain politician takes this idea and then try to bring their agenda, which is totally against Islamic principle. So how do you cater this thing? This is happening, it's real. Please enlighten us on this.
Jazakumullah khair. Yes, how can we prevent these ideas from being hijacked is by defending them, by saying that this does not represent Islam. Because in the name of justice and in the name of maslaha and in the name of freedom, people could say anything. And the ideas of Maqasid Syariah appeal to politicians. Some of them with good intentions, some of them without a good intention. So we have to defend the fixed matters of Islam. If a politician you mentioned is going to use these concepts for the common good and for building good community consensus, proposing a good policy, then this is fine. But if the politician is going to use Maqasid Syariah to cover corruption or a law that is unfair, then we say no, this is corruption. It's not called Maqasid Syariah. You see, so we defend. But this does not mean that we don't focus on Maqasid Syariah. Some people say do not teach about this because some people would misuse it. No, we should teach the right knowledge, whether people misuse it or not. People misused tasawwuf, wal-fiqh, wal-tafsir, wal-usul. In the name of tasawwuf, people did haram things. And in the name of fiqh, they did haram things. But doesn't mean that we don't teach fiqh. We still teach fiqh, even if some people misuse fiqh. So we teach Maqasid Syariah, and if somebody misuses Maqasid Syariah, we say, no, this is not Maqasid Syariah anymore. Because in the name of Maqasid Syariah, then we go against, as I'm saying, the fixed matters of Islam. So if in the name of Maqasid Syariah, I was in America a couple of weeks ago, and in the name of Maqasid Syariah, they want to allow gay marriage in America. One student, I was teaching a class, an American student, he told me, well, if you're talking about freedom and this, well, why not? I said, because in Islam, we have a religious definition of marriage. Marriage in Islam is not defined socially. It is defined religiously. So in the Quran, we have whom we can marry and whom we cannot marry. So you cannot marry your mother and your sister and your da-da-da. This is defined in the Quran. I told them in the Quran, a man cannot marry a man. It's not a Quranic thing. So your philosophy brings that is un-Islamic. So he said, but in the name of Maqasid Syariah, I said, no, Maqasid Syariah is not about that. Maqasid Syariah is about the variables, not the fixed matters. The fixed matters, it's like, and I told him the definition of sin in Islam is fixed, is a religious definition. No scholar would come and change the definition of what we call, I call them zina or adultery. This is adultery in Islam. If somebody is going to change that, then they are not a scholar. They don't understand Islam. So if somebody in the name of maqasid wants to make alcohol or drugs halal or zina halal or any of these things, then it's haram. Then, you see, so to insist on the fixed matters. That's why when it comes to the fixed matters, you find, like myself, I take a very strict opinion. When it comes to the issues of ibadat and the issues of marriage and divorce, the issues of, you take the strict opinions because you don't want people to play in the name of Maqasid Syariah with the religion. We can negotiate the variable matters as much as we can. So I hope this answers that question.
Yes, I would like to ask a question about inter-religious marriage. So we here in Penang, we sometimes face this problem. When a wife, for instance, converted to Islam and the husband doesn't want to follow. So what happened to the children, to whom the guardianship of the children? Sometimes there are in our court, Sharia court, there is this problem.
Jazakallah khair. Well, this is an important question. It is a question that the European Council for Fatwa and Research, of which I'm a member, had struggled with for some time, and different scholars had different opinions. I personally wrote a chapter in one of my books, Fiqh al-Maqasid, on that particular question. A wife converting to Islam without her husband, converting with her. And in that chapter, I supported the opinion of our Sheikh Qaradawi, in that the marriage continues to be valid, and she has the choice to leave him or to continue in the marriage. يعني الزواج على الاختيار. So she has a choice. And that is based on a number of evidence. It's a long story, but to give, and I'll send you the book, Sheikh, inshallah. In case they divorce, the children, they go with the mother. Well, the children will go according to the custody law, but in Islam, the mother takes them. And in any case, so if she converts to Islam, if she divorces her husband, she takes the children. And you mean the religion? The religion, according to her. The guardianship is hers, and she teaches them Islam. She teaches them religion. But if she continues with him in the marriage, that is an opinion that was supported by a number of scholars. Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim and many others who supported that opinion. And that is based on a number of stories. The story of Zainab, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, who did not leave her husband, even though she migrated from Mecca to Medina, and she left him in Mecca. And when she migrated, by the way, from Mecca to Medina, she was pregnant, and when she fell from the camel, she lost her baby. Ruqayya bint Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she Ruqayya or Zainab, Ruqayya, and she lost her baby on the way, and her husband was not Muslim, and then he came to Medina after, and he became Muslim. I dealt with that particular hadith at length, and especially the part of the narration that says فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَحِلُّ لَكِ, he is not lawful for you. That part is da'if, because that part is not part of the authentic narration of Bint Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I dealt with that at length. But the interreligious marriage is a different question. When I'm asked about a Muslim marrying a non-Muslim, I say that it's not allowed. I don't believe that a Muslim could marry a non-Muslim, whether male or female, because I think that there is a difference between starting a marriage and continuing a marriage. يجوز في البقاء ما لا يجوز في الابتداء. We have a قاعدة, we have a rule that says the continuation is different from the initiation. So this marriage, when she converts to Islam, she can continue with him because the marriage is already there. And that's the hadith of Umar radiallahu anhu and Ali radiallahu anhu. In that particular book I dealt at length. There are Sahaba radiallahu anhu, they left the wife continuing with the husband because the marriage is already there. But to initiate a marriage with a non-Muslim, I don't believe in this. I think ولا تنكحوا المشركات حتى يؤمن ولا أمة مؤمنة خير من مشركة ولا أعجبتكم. Do not marry the female mushriks until that's for men. ولا تنكحوا المشركين حتى يؤمنوا, and do not marry mushrik men. So if the religion of the person is shirk, which is the current Christianity and the current non-Christian religions, then this marriage of Muslim non-Muslim is not something I personally allow in a fatwa, whether from a male side or a female side. But the continuation of the marriage is a different story. Allah Alam. Of course, there are many other opinions. Yes, please.
Ini bagi ni nak cakap sikit.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My honor guest speaker, Professor Dr. Auda, Dr. Mufti, Dr. Mufti dan YB Haji Maqasid. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our guest speaker who have given us a very, interesting and encouraging speech today and in our discussion just now. And I just want to relate to our topic today, Maqasid Syariah, Maqasid perspective on first nation building. You say first nation building covers many areas of the nation buildings. One of which could be, in a state where we practice democracy, right? So I think there is an important element in the democratic system where we have constitution. So anything that we do and we act must be in according with the constitution. So, and you also mentioned this morning about the nation states. So in a nation state there is one topic that we always discuss about constitutionalism, in which there must be a separation between the legislative, executive, judiciary. So how do you see this country where we have democratic systems, this idea of separation of power, whether it is, it is according with Maqasid, or in line with the Maqasid Syariah parameter or perspectives, or not? And so that we were able to at least to not to correct but to give some clue how to resolve some of the maybe problem that we are facing now in terms of our nation building. That one question. Another one I think regarding the Maqasid, also Al-Dhara'at Khamsah, the five necessities. Some of the faith scholars they put another point that to protect the honor. How could you relate this? Can you put in the which one the most prior? Do we have Muhafazah al-Din, Muhafazah al-Ma, An-Nas, al-Aq? So these five, which one the most important in our life? Whether it is to preserve the lives important or to preserve ad-Din important, which one would be the most priority in these categories of necessities? Thank you.
MashaAllah. Another two heavy questions. The separation of power is very Islamic in the sense of values. So when you separate the legislation and the executive and the judicial, this is something that we know in the Sharia, that you really cannot be an executive and a qadi at the same time. You cannot be a judge and the sultan. You have to separate between a person who is a judge and a person who is a sultan. And if you wish the legislative, the person who is a faqih. Like, so in our history, we have known these separations. In a democracy, when you separate the powers, this is something for the good of everybody. And nobody should really monopolize power, especially the executive. We notice a phenomena where the executive powers are monopolizing the three powers. They tell the judges what to do. Well, in the Arab world, we have that. They tell the judges what to do, and they tell the legislature what to legislate. And actually, there are two other powers that are becoming very important. The media and the civil society. So really, when we talk about this, we talk really about 5 powers, not 3. Because media today is a very important power that is supposed to be separate from the executive and the legislative and the judicial. And the civil society is also another power that has to be. So I know this is not traditional political science theories, but I believe in the contemporary or the modern political science theories that include civil society as a power and includes media as a power. And I think we should nurture the power of civil society in order to balance the power of the state. So a good state is a state that leaves room for civil society to expand, because that's when you allow people to form their own organizations, and especially through endowments, through al-awqaf. From an Islamic perspective, it is very important for the civil society to thrive on al-awqaf, on the endowments. And if the state really guarantees freedoms and rights for al-awqaf, then you are actually nurturing a civil society that is strong. In our Islamic civilization, when the civil society was very strong with its awqaf, the state was strong and the civilization was strong because people were strong. People were, through awqaf, building mosques and funding schools and even funding part of the army through al-awqaf. So this is also, and it's important that the executive powers do not infringe over the civil society. Its awqaf, its endowments, its organization, not in the name of executive power. People in civil society are persecuted. This is unacceptable from an Islamic point of view, because in Islam, people can organize whatever they want. They can organize education and health and so on. It doesn't have to be monopolized by the state all the time. You have a question about the priorities and ضرورات الخمسة أو الستة. No, the حفظ الدين والنفس والعقل والمال والعرض, the preservation of faith and life and family. This is not set in stone. There is no ayah that says يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن المقاصد خمس or مقاصد ست, or there is nothing like that. This is just ijtihad, fiqh, by some of the scholars. And actually, the meaning of that changes, like preservation, حفظ النفس, preservation of soul. When we write about this, we say حفظ الحياة, preservation of life. Because in Islam, every form of life is protected, not just a human life. And حفظ النسل, or the preservation of offspring or progeny. When we write about it today, we say preservation of family, really, because the preservation of offspring is very male-oriented, if you wish. So we really talk about a family when we talk about offspring. And therefore, the meanings themselves are changing as time proceeds. The prioritization, I don't believe that they are prioritized in the way that Imam al-Ghazali had put it. Imam al-Ghazali is the first person who, or Ghazali, is the first person who really prioritized Maqasid Syariah and his Mustapha. I think it is a way of looking at this. I see them as intersecting circles. I don't see them as priorities. But in Siyasa Syariah, most of the scholars prioritized al-nafs before al-deen. In Siyasa Syariah, in Islamic political theory, حفظ النفس, or the protection of life, came before حفظ الدين in Siyasa. But in the individual sense, حفظ الدين before النفس. So I sacrifice myself for my deen, right? But you cannot sacrifice the society for the deen, because if the society is sacrificed, there is no deen anymore. So that's why in Siyasa Sharia, in the political theory in Islam, life comes before faith, because your objective as a siyasi, as somebody in the polity world, your objective is to preserve life and then to preserve deen. But individually, your objective is to preserve deen and then preserve life. So there is a different debate in Siyasa Sharia about the prioritization. Allah alam yani, but yeah, they issue constitution. This is very important. And oftentimes in the Islamic thought, we don't give enough weight to constitutional matters. You know, some scholars or some brothers, they say an opinion. I tell them, but this is not constitution. I say, no, it's not important. No, constitution is important, because the constitution defines a country. If there is no constitution, there is no Malaysia. You know, so if the application of the hudud in one of the provinces is going to go against the constitution, then it's not Islamic. Because if we start to play with the constitution, sometimes the Islamic parties and liberal parties too, sometimes they don't understand the importance of a constitution. That if you start to play with the constitution, you are playing with the identity of the state. And I don't care about the identity of the state in principle, but I care about it in practice. You see, you really don't want to change what's called Malaysia into 2 countries or 3 or 5, or you don't want that. Like if you're going to compromise the constitution, you're compromising the state. Similarly, back in Egypt, again, after the Arab Spring, sometimes the brothers there in the parliament, they proposed laws that are unconstitutional. We tell them, well, this is unconstitutional. They want to take jizya, for example, from the Christians of Egypt. They want to take a tax just because they're non-Muslim or they're Christian. And we tell them the constitution says that all citizens are equal in front of the law. And people pay taxes according to their income, not according to their religion. So you can't really do that. Like, fine, jizya is in the Quran, yes, but is it going to be part of the Egyptian law? So we tell them this is not constitutional. They say, no, constitution is not important. The Quran is important. No, in the state, the constitution is important. And the Quran becomes your private business. Because if you are going to negate the constitution, then you don't have a Republic of Egypt anymore. Then people are going to fight in the street. So this kind of thinking, sometimes I notice the Islamic parties are not careful with the constitution. It's very important. Jazakumullah khair.
Sedikit lagi penjelasan apa yang saya rasa perlu ditambah, iaitu tentang tingkat-tingkat maqasid dari mana yang dah didulukan tadi. Jadi percama kita dah jelaskan bahawa kita tak boleh korbankan agama untuk menyelamatkan diri kita. Sebaliknya kita boleh mati syahid, kita korbankan diri kita untuk membela agama. Tapi kita kena faham apa yang dimaksud hifzuddin tadi. Yani the preservation or safeguard of religion tadi. Itu bukan hukum agama, dia ada beza. Antara hukum agama kita boleh sacrifice dalam keadaan tertentu, darurah macam mana. Kalau dalam keadaan orang perempuan dengan orang lelaki dalam keadaan biasa tak boleh bersentuhan kan, bersentuhan kulit. Tapi kalau kita lihat seorang lelaki melihat seorang wanita jatuh dalam telaga ke, dia kena selamatkan nyawa wanita itu dan sacrificekan hukum tadi, hukum yang kata tak boleh bersentuh dan dilarang sentuh. Maksudnya dalam keadaan itu dibolehkan ad-darurah tubihul mahzurat. Tapi setakat tu ialah mana ad-darurah tuqaddaru bi qadariha, kan ada kadar dia. Tapi yang dimaksudkan hifzuddin di sini ialah din tu, agama tu persik, dia to be or not to be tu. Faham tak? Mana kalau kita tak sacrifice dari kita kerana itu, habislah agama maknanya. Macam kita komunis kan, dia Afghanistan, dia nak cuba taklukkan di Afghanistan maknanya. Kalau rakyat tidak bangkit menentang, maka mungkin akan menjejaskan kedudukan agama Islam di negara itu. Masa itu baru gunakan hifzuddin itu maksudnya kita letak di atas top priority. Pandangan saya.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is retired Major Zaidi, Royal Malaysia Air Force. Now I'm working in the Chief Minister's Office, Saudara Lim Guan Eng. Okay, Doctor, for your info, or you may already know, in our country, the great debate is about hudud. Okay, it's all about hudud now. Some parties think because the Muslims are majority in this country, without delay, they should implement hudud without delay, especially in those states which has high majority of Muslims. They even call those who rejected their effort as infidels or murtad. Okay, takfiri. So if we go by your lecture today about Maqasid, which says that you don't carry out hudud or whatever law if it falls under the area of difference, you can imagine what these people will say about it. Okay, okay. I will mention that. In other words, your concept is can be considered a very submissive form of Islam. Okay? Submissive to the demand of non-Muslims, whereas as Muslims we are supposed to try our best to carry out all instructions by God in the Quran. My personal opinion is that I'm more inclined with the concept of fiqh awlawiyat, of the rule of priorities in the building of a Muslim state. Our reference about this concept is none other than the Quran and the Sunnah itself. The fact is that the Quran is given to the Prophet ﷺ not as a complete book, but verses by verses spread within 23 years, according to the need and readiness of the people at that time. For example, war is not allowed for the Muslims because in the beginning because they are minority and very weak. It's only allowed after they have the required numbers and strengths. The concept is mentioned in the one verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تُلْخُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Do not throw yourself into destruction. The same as hudud, Dr. Qardawi said hudud was only introduced towards the end of the Prophet's rule. It was not in the early part. If we compare with Malaysian context, we should not discard hudud altogether, because it is in the Quran and logically because the majority of Malaysians are Muslims. But the awlawiyat in Malaysia right now is not hudud, but it is to topple a corrupt and non-democratic regime and replace it with a clean and democratic government first. Then only we go to the next step, introduce other form of Islam in education, military, economy, develop the country, create jobs, eradicate poverty, and so on. And then only slowly we introduce Islamic laws and hudud. I believe by the time the non-Muslim will trust us and go along with us. Right now they don't trust us because whenever we mention Muslim rulers, all they can think of is about corruption, stealing people's money, one MDB and so on. I won't mention more, otherwise I'll get arrested after this. Okay, detention without trial and so on. Okay, to conclude my question, what is your opinion about fiqh awlawiyat as opposed to, or is it in conjunction with your Maqasid Syariah? Thank you.
Okay. Well, Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. I agree with what you said. And what you said is fiqh awlawiyat really is a matter of priorities. And fiqh al-awlawiyat has everything to do with Maqasid Syariah. These are two sides of the same coin. We are talking about the same thing here when we talk about fiqh al-awlawiyat, or the understanding of priorities in Islam. When we mention the hudud, we have to also, we cannot just say hudud and that's it. We have to get into some details about which had, which punishment are we talking about, and how it applies, and it's a bit of a longer story. Let me take a few minutes. There are a number of hudud that are mentioned in the Quran. The hadd al-qatl for murder, hadd al-zina for adultery, hadd al-sariqa for theft, al-hiraba for piracy or for, these, and al-qadhf for defamation. These are the 5 hudud mentioned in the Quran. And these hudud, they have to apply in a society when people agree to apply them, because otherwise how can we? And when they apply in a society, they have to apply on everybody. They cannot apply to the weak. The Prophet ﷺ, إنه أهلك من كان قبلكم أنهم كانوا إذا سرق فيهم الشريف تركوه وإذا سرق الضعيف أقاموا عليه الحد. So people before you were destroyed when the noble people got away with theft, and the weak people were persecuted when they committed theft. So if you're going to cut the hands of everybody from the top of the ladder of power to the poor farmer who steals a loaf of bread, then cut the hands. But you have to apply it to everybody. You can't, I'm asked this question in the Arab world. I tell them, well, if you also can cut the hand of the Amir, then you can also cut the hand of the driver. But you cannot cut the hand of the driver and you don't cut the hand of the Amir. And the driver stole a loaf of bread to eat, or stole 100 riyal, and you cut his hand, and the Amir stole $2 billion. In one of the cases, without mentioning names and particulars, but the court said that the Amir stole $2 billion in one case, one of the princes in one of the Arab regimes. So why don't you cut his hand? He got away, طبعا. He got away with it. You see, so so one condition to apply the hudud is to apply them on everybody, not on the weak. If this is not going to apply, then there is what's called in the Sharia a shubha. Shubha means a doubt. A doubt in what? A doubt in justice. So if there is a doubt that your application is going to achieve justice, then don't apply. The hadith says, إِدْرَأُ الْحُدُودَ بِالشُّبُهَاتِ. Do not apply the had if there is a justice issue. If there is a doubt in justice. This is a hadith. It's not my saying. So when you apply to the weak and not the powerful, then there is a doubt in justice. When the weak have all sorts of issues, and as you mentioned, illiteracy, poverty, sickness, you cannot really apply the hudud on somebody who is poor, because that poor person has a share of the public money. It's not fair, it's not just to apply a had on a person because he stole and he needs the money. And it's not fair to apply the hudud on people who do hiraba just because they stole a wallet from a car, and you don't apply hudud on other forms of hiraba, other forms of piracy that are more organized. That's not Sharia. So I am with the hudud. I teach Sharia, and I teach criminal code in Islam, a course I taught in universities. But part of what we teach the students is that the criminal code applies if there is no shubha, if there is no doubt of justice. A lot of the calls for hudud have shubuhat. To me, political shubha. There is political games here that are played when you talk about the application of the hudud, because the same, I'm not talking about Malaysia, I'm not aware of all the Malaysian details, but back in the Arab world, the same Islamic party that wants to apply the had in a place like Egypt or Arabia, they don't talk about the powerful people. They talk about, seriously, the poor people. And this is a problem, because you want to apply the hudud more and more on the poor house workers and the poor drivers and the poor garbage collectors. when they steal a bag of milk, and you don't want to apply on the president or the emir or the king or one of those guys, and they are the biggest thieves in our ummah. They stole malullah. There is something in the Sharia called malullah, or the money, the wealth of Allah, which is malul ummah, the wealth, the public money. This is a Sharia concept. So if somebody takes from the public money, this is theft. And I know that some madhahib differentiated between al-ikhtilas wa sariqa, theft, and what's al-ikhtilas? Stealing from public money versus stealing from individual money. So they thought that stealing from the individual money has a had in it, but from the public money, no, it doesn't have had. And I think this is nonsense. It's any theft is theft, and murder is murder. So no, there is no ridda or any of this is nonsense. When we talk about not applying the hudud, we are talking about siyasa shar'iyya. What is priority? If we apply the hudud, how can we apply them? And if the society does not agree, are we going to force people? We're going to make a coup and announce a khilafah or something? How can you do that? I'm afraid that people who are doing this are not really aware of the bigger picture. And I'm not surprised, because I saw it in the Arab world. Wallahi, during the past few years, without mentioning too much of this, but we told them many times, brothers, this is not going to work. This is a disaster. And they think, well, no, you guys are, you live in Europe now, you don't understand. No, we will make it work. We'll make an Islamic state in Egypt. No, we will not. It's not going to work, because you don't have power. You don't have the power of the media. You don't have power of, like these Islamic parties that are calling for hudud. Do they have real power to back up on the ground, like means of violence and stuff? Do they have the public support? Other than an election. We are very good with elections. Islamic parties are really good, great. They go door to door, and we can make people vote. But if we have a power struggle on the ground, can we enforce what we talk about? If we don't, then we have to fear Allah, because we are taking the society to destruction. And this is exactly what the Islamic parties did in the Arab world. They took the societies to destruction. And no spring, it became a bad winter, a very bad winter. And I don't mean to blame them. They are my dear brothers, and some of the brothers who are sentenced to death are long life friends of mine. I feel very bad about it. But I'm talking politics here. Politics-wise, they destroyed the situation, because they allowed the tyrannies in the Arab world to fight back. And people who have the upper hand on the ground, people who control the gangs and control the weapons and control the drugs, this is the reality on the ground. So if you really don't have power to back what you are saying, then you're destroying your country. Sometimes out of not understanding, not aware, lack of awareness, lack of education. But if I don't understand. I honestly don't understand sometimes how some Islamic parties don't look at the consequences, what we call in the Sharia, al-ma'alat, the consequences. So yes, apply ya sidi the hudud, but what are the consequences of that? What will happen when you do that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us about the consequences of our work. وَلَا تَسُبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَيَسُبُّوا اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. Do not call the idols names, so that the idolaters do not call Allah names, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is what they call al-ma'al, al-dhara'i', al-hukmu bil-ma'al, judging based on the consequence. So I am with this hudud theory, but what is the consequence of the theory? If the consequence is going to be negative, and it is, you don't have the means of applying the hudud here in this country. I'm an outsider, but that's how I see it. There are many other forces around you that will eat you. This is the world is not a funny place anymore. You see, and when you come, you want to make what, an Islamic state here and apply the hudud, you're going to get yourself in positions that you never calculated. Most of the Arab armies now are destroyed, and Turkey has major problems, and Iran has issues, and so forth. Like, where do you have power in Islam? Nowhere. And Malaysia is one of the few countries that are left without wars and without, this is a very dangerous take. And I'm saying this, Allah, out of nasiha. I have nothing to do with this. I'm here for a few days, I go back to Canada. But I'm saying nasiha, an advice for my brothers. You be very careful with what you do with this country, because this is one of the few countries that are left in the world to represent Islam, to give a good picture of Islam, and to have some power for Islam and Muslims. You have economic power here. That's not easy in this country. So if you're going to get yourself into the business of internal fractures and applying the Sharia, you're going to get yourself occupied. As simple as that. We never imagined it will happen in the Arab world. The Arab world is occupied. All over is occupied. And if they are not occupied by force, like the Russian army, or you will find bases, American bases. It's occupied. And they busy themselves with the mundane issues. For example, in the Arab Peninsula, different countries. They debate issues of, whether you can build a grave beside a masjid, or whether you can listen to music, and the niqab. These are the Islamic issues, right? And the American and Russian bases are not Islamic issues. The scholars don't talk about that, you see. So what's going on? You want to make another, problem here in this country? No, I think you have to be very strict. The moderate voices have to be loud. And they have to tell the extreme voices to shut up and to really look at the consequences. The moderate voices tend to be scared of the extreme voices just because they are loud. But they are a minority. The extreme voices are a minority. And they are very politicized. Perhaps it would help if intellectual people like yourselves, I heard, mashallah, highly intellectual questions, uncover the politics behind it. So when we uncover the politics behind a lot of things in the Arab world, we realize that no, there is a lot of politics behind some Islamic voices that are doing us a disfavor as Muslims. So we say no, there is a politics, there is a corruption here. And there is corruption from some of the Islamic parties and all of that. I don't know the details here in this country, but it doesn't smell good that people are really focusing on these issues, and they let the consequence that is very dangerous come. I don't understand. Jazakallah khair.
Sorry. In this session, I will ask question in English. I know you are bored with the question about the hudud and the Sharia law, but if you notice the situation happening in Malaysia, this is the real problem that we face and we read a lot. And I want to ask a question about why you have mentioned that the implementation of Sharia law or the hudud law is good to be applied if it is the condition or the convenience is good. And how are we going to indicate this situation is suitable? What is the indicator? This is the first question. The second question, are we going to achieve Maqasid Syariah if we fail to implement Sharia? For example, we have hudud, we have 6 matters in hudud. If these 6 things are not being applied, are we going to get the Maqasid Syariah? And from what I understand from your lecture, you said that the Maqasid Syariah is only being applied for the al-mutaghayyirat. The hudud law fall under mutaghayyirat or the dawabit? And the other question, mungkin you can compile the answer. the Sharia law or the Hudud law is only fall under Muslim. For non-Muslim, it's not your business. Is it true? Or for what are we going to take the opinion from non-Muslim if it only fall under the Muslim matters? Okay, thank you.
Jazakallah khair. Oh, many questions. Sidi, you mentioned Sharia law and Hudud law synonymously, and I got really annoyed because Sharia law is not Hudud law. Sharia law is many things. You know, Sharia is not about the Hudud only. The Hudud is a very small part of the Sharia that has some conditions to apply. You want to apply the Sharia, apply the Sharia means to feed the hungry and to give shelter to the shelterless and to have good roads and to prevent the forests from disappearing. This is Sharia too, you know. This is not the secular agenda, this is the Islamic agenda too. I am annoyed when the Islamic agenda is only a hudud, you know, and the Islamic agenda does not deal with the average citizen, the person on the street. The person on the street, what do they want? They want education for their children. This is an Islamic question too. They want to feed, and they want clothing, and they want jobs. Creation of jobs is Sharia. Why is creation of jobs not Sharia? The problem is that when we define the Sharia, that's why I'm saying there is bad politics here. When we define the Sharia as hudud, we leave the creation of jobs and development and the environment and public health. The public health issue is Sharia. So when you have problems with hospitals, applying the Sharia is to have better hospitals. Why is this not Islamic? Why is the Islamic only have to be this hudud? خلاص يعني هو Wallahi, I'm sorry I'm laughing, but sometimes I don't understand. I don't understand why Islam is defined in that, you know, very, very narrow, and Islam is very big. Subhanallah. So that's one. That's the hudud law is not the Sharia law. The hudud law. طيب. Is it ثوابت or متغيرات? The hudud are ثوابت. They are part of the Quran. But the application is متغيرات. Their application is variable. And that's why Umar radiallahu anhu, when he did not find that it's not only Umar, in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, اdra'u al-hudud al-shubuhat, do not apply the had if you have doubt in justice. نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن إقامة الحدود في الغزو. Like if there is a war, hudud don't apply. That's from the hadith. So the application is variable. The hudud themselves are part of the Quran. We cannot remove them from the Quran. And they will never do. Why? They are there. But the application is variable. And therefore the application is mutaghayirat. When we talk here about the hudud, we talk about it as a variable in terms of the application. You mentioned, what if they apply on Muslims only? Well, this is not constitutional. And as I mentioned, constitution is important. We cannot really just ignore the constitution, because otherwise we don't have Malaysia. If we don't have a constitution, we don't have a country to apply the hudud, and we don't have a state, we don't have police, we don't have courts, because the constitution makes a country. Unless we go and change the constitution, and then we say in a constitution that, well, we will have different criminal punishment laws, as we have different marriage laws. You have different marriage laws here in Malaysia, right? Marriage law for Muslims and for non-Muslims different. You can do that with marriage, but you cannot do that with punishments. No constitutional scholar in the world will agree that you have different criminal codes for different citizens based on their religion. One citizen has a capital punishment for the crime, and another citizen for the same crime gets $500 fine. No, you can't do that. This is not a modern state. Otherwise, make a coup. Tell the brothers who are suggesting this, yalla, look for arms, There are lots of arms in Africa. We can send you some stuff. Make a coup and declare an Islamic State. That's the only way you can do this, practically. But that's not going to happen in Malaysia. Nobody will allow you. I mean, you have to think about it with your mind, you know. So it's not possible. It's not applicable. And yes, the application is mutaghayyirat. It's variable. It's not fixed. And again, it is very important that we reclaim Sharia. We need to reclaim Sharia from people who make Sharia about issues and not about other issues. Public health, education, the environment, these are not secular issues. These are Sharia issues. And we have a responsibility as Muslims to feed the hungry and give shelter to the shelterless and for people to worship in safety in the masjid or in a church or whatever. This is part of the leader's responsibility in Islam, right? And for the animals to eat and not to be tortured, and for the plants. This is also, Umar radiallahu anhu was scared that a camel was harmed in Iraq, and he doesn't know about it, because he is responsible for the camels too, and for the animals. Why is this all of a sudden becoming the secular agenda? So back in the Arab world, people who talk about education and women's rights and justice in the courts and so forth are the atheists and the secularists. But the Islamists are not talking about that. The Islamists are talking about the laws that ban bathing suits on the beach and the halal food. They want more restrictions on this, and they live in a different planet from the planet that says that we have hunger problems in the Arab world everywhere, including Saudi Arabia and Emirates and Egypt and places, Libya. It's full of oil, but there is hunger. People die of hunger in the Arab world. And the Islamic parties are not talking about hunger or illiteracy. Illiteracy now in Egypt is 65%. And some numbers are 75%. 75% of the population does not even read and write. So what hudud are you talking about? Can you make them read and write first to know what's halal and what's haram? And then apply the punishment when they know what's haram, but they don't know. They don't read and write, right? We have major problems. I lived in the Emirates until 2005 for 4 years. And there is hunger problems in the Emirates. Go to Fujairah or go to even very close to Burj Al Arab, where Burj Al Arab is. Go in the desert. This is the water, and this is Burj Al Arab. This gold walls and all of that. 7-star hotel. Go beyond it 2 kilometers. You will find people hungry. We used to go and feed them. You see. So when this is a major problem in a very rich country, and it's an Islamic issue that we tell the very rich princes, well, give your zakat, give your money to the poor, solve the housing problem so that people could get married. This is an Islamic issue too, for people to get married, But the Islamic talk in that country is all about, what kind of thobe you wear, and the thobe has to be short, and the amama, and, big debate about, when I used to live there, a big debate about the amama, Islamic or not. And people got upset when they asked me about amama. I said, Wallah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wore amama, and Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl wore amama too. What did they wear? Cowboy hat? No, they wore amama. This is libas al-Arab. Arabs wear amamas. And so they didn't wear jeans or anything. The kuffar didn't wear jeans or suit. They wear amama and thobe too. So what is this amama issue? Tijah al-Arab, al-ama'im wa tijah al-Arab. The Prophet ﷺ said, amama is the crown of Arabs. Arabs, Muslim and non-Muslim. Christian Arab today, they still wear amama, and Jews in Bahrain, they wear amama and hijab. Why not? I mean, so why is it an issue that what amama you wear, and you have people who are dying of hunger in a very rich country, and you don't have a program for them? Because it's not an Islamic issue. It is only, the American NGOs and the UN who are trying to feed the hungry in our countries. And subhanallah, where are Muslims and where are the Islamic parties who are trying to educate the illiterate and feed the hungry and achieve justice? So I think, Jazakallah khair, it's a matter of priorities, and I hope this answers the question. I hope so. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you very much. I think we've come to a close of this session. Thank you for your participation, and thank you to distinguished speaker, Dr. Auda.
Thank you so much for the panels, for such a very informative discussions. So we get about the Maqasid Syariah, and we have some of souvenirs from Professor Dr. Jasser Auda and Maqasid Institute Malaysia. For first, Yang Berhormat Dato' Haji Rashid Hasnun. And then Sahibu Samahah Datuk Dr. Wan Salim Wan Muhammad Nur.
Mana kamera?
Dr. Mustapha Kamal. Dato' Anwar Faisal. And Professor Dr. Ismail. Once again, thank you so much for the panels today and Professor Dr. Jasser Auda. As a saying goes, to every beginning there is an ending. And now the forum ceremony has come to its end. We'd like to thank you for Yang Berhormat Dato' Haji Rashid, Deputy Chief of Minister of Penang, and Penang State Government for organising and supporting our program today. College Islam Teknologi Antarabangsa Pulau Pinang, Kitab, Penang Institute, Yayasan Islam Pulau Pinang, and all fellow audience today. Thank you so much for coming today. And before we end, we have a photography session after this, and after that we have lunch. Alright, so we end forum today with Tasbih Kufran as well.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
And also doa for Mufti.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك مولانا سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا عيبا إلا سترته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا مرضا إلا شفيته ولا ميتا إلا رحمته ولا ضالا إلا هديته ولا مولودا إلا أصلحته ولا حيرانا إلا دللته ولا عدوا إلا خذلته ولا مجاهدا في سبيلك إلا نصرته ولا أسيرا إلا فككته ولا حاجة هي لك رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا قضيتها يا كريم. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وقلبا خاشعا ونورا ساطعا ورزقا واسعا وشفاء من كل داء وغنيمة من كل بر ونجاة من كل إثم وتوبة من كل ذنب. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا وأخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. صلى اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Jazakumullah and jazak. Once again, thank you so much for the attending this forum today. Alright, so we have books for those who do not yet get the books. There. For my wanita and masjid, and also Maqasid Syariah for beginners in Malay translation. Alright, so all are invited to get picture here. Yayasan Islam Pulau Pinang dijemput Tuan Haji Anwar.
Okey. Jasser Islam. Sudah betul?
Okay, ya dah.
Kawan-kawan ya. InsyaAllah.
Muhammad.
Okey dah. Alhamdulillah. Okey, terima kasih. Baik. Buat. Ikut foto balik.
All are invited to lunch downstairs. Alright. Ambil gambar ramai-ramai.
Apa gambar ramai? Senang nak tajuk. So dia kurangkan lagi ni. Want to take the signature, live signature dengan dia. Bagus ya.
Bulan rezeki kemarin memang bagi.
Nampak banyak. Kita nak pergi balik pulau ni. Tak habis. Lebih berapa apa ada percuk? Ada kenduri. Kenduri ada dia balik pulau ada.
Habis kita jalan.
Tidak terang.
Cepat.
Okey, terima kasih banyak datang. Daripada mana ni? Daripada Penang ke ada daripada luar? Penang lah. Bukan.